podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Cardiff Central Podcast. Hello and welcome to the first ever Cardiff Central podcast with me, Lee G, and my two co-hosts are Aled and Carwyn. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you both?
Evening, Lee. Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good, man. You okay, Car?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. All good.
Good. So this is all brand new. This is all kind of fresh and lovely. So we thought it was only fair that Cardiff had its own podcast to talk about all things Cardiff, and that is really the aim of what we're doing with this, is to, it's part of the rap family. So if you've ever listened to the rap podcast, you'll know that we dick around a lot on that one. So I'm sure this is just going to be 100% professional and straight down the line, and there's going to be none of that malarkey stuff here, guys. So yeah, just so it's about getting fans involved. The whole point of the rap family is taking the fans' point of view and putting the fans' podcast out there. So do get involved. You'll see us on social media. All of that kind of stuff's being set up now. And yeah, come and have a chat, particularly if you're involved in Cardiff, you're a coach, a player, whatever. Come and have a chat, because the more important voices, people that know what they're talking about.
That's what I'm implying. We don't have who know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's like saying that coaches do know what they're talking about, and that's just as equally the other way, really. But yeah, it's about getting many people involved. So I thought we'll just do a couple of introductions before we crack on with the rugby stuff. So I'm Lee G. For those that listen to the rap podcast, you will have heard me on there. And I am a Scarlet supporter, so I'll put my hands up to that now. So I'm here just to kind of get the guys started and get them comfortable. And then when I start winding Blues fans up, I just sort of dig that one in this right at the start, boys. When I start winding Cardiff fans up, I will disappear into the background, guys, and just because it should be for Cardiff supporters, and I just do the editing stuff in the background, because there's nothing worse than having a Scarlet supporter on a Cardiff pod. It just doesn't feel right. It's just not. I would never invite an Osprey supporter onto my Scarlet's pod. So unless I was in control of their mute button, put it that way. Yeah, so I run a couple of pods and do the social media for them and all that kind of stuff. But yes, I've got a Cardiff connection. I went to university in Cardiff. I did watch a couple of games. I made the mistake of watching Cardiff Newport down at the Arms Park. That was the first game I went to see, and it nearly scared me off the game for life. I was right down the front, and there was a ruck, and I remember seeing Hemi Taylor getting caught at the bottom of a ruck, and his shirt just getting ripped to bits with Newport studs, and I'm just like, oh. So yeah, so I have kind of got a Cardiff connection, but nowhere near what you guys have. So Aled, give us a little bit about yourself, mate, and why you love Cardiff.
All right, Lee. First of all, thanks for having me on here. Am I here? Why do I love Cardiff? I grew up in Telford, which is in Shropshire. For those of you who don't know, which is probably most of the people listening, if you draw a line between Birmingham and Wrexham, it's about halfway in the middle, on the English side of the border. But I grew up in a Welsh household, rugby mad from a young age. The closest club to us here would be Sale now, but back when I was growing up, it probably would have been Leicester. My dad's from Cardiff. My mum's from Ynys Bull. So I grew up indoctrinated early by my dad. Then grew up with the club, watching as a child and as a teenager when we became the Blues. At the age of 18, I then went to Cardiff Uni when Cardiff was sort of at its peak. I know what you're going to say, Lee, but we did have a peak around when we won the first Challenge Cup and then the Heineken Cup semi-final against Leicester. And so since then, I've really been sort of fanatical about it, really, I suppose. After uni, I joined the military, so I kind of bounced around a little bit around the south coast of England. So not been to as many games as I would have liked to. But yeah, out and about. So keen to get back involved. And that's why I volunteered to do this, really. Just try and get back in touch with people. Because I got a few mates up here, but they're all into soccer. There's only so much I can talk to my dog about what Cardiff have been up to recently. She never argues with me, so I want to know if my opinions are any good or if I'm just waffling. So
does your dog hide behind the sofa if you're watching a Cardiff game? Because that's where mine go. Yeah.
I say Cardiff and Wales. I'm a tense watcher. I'm a jumper. I jump up. I'll sit at the edge of my seat and I'm jumping up, and the dog's going ballistic when it happens. If I'm clapping or whatever. They don't know what's going on. Basically, it's like fireworks going off. But yeah,
I know the feeling. I'm exactly the same. And so I got two dogs, and they both hide. I've had to block off behind the sofa, but so they try and hide under the table, or they'll find somewhere to hide, especially if we're getting hammered. I think that's the issue. They haven't experienced the joy enough. They've only experienced the frustration. So out of interest, what did you do at uni? So I did business at Cardiff Uni.
I did biology.
Oh, that's a proper one. That's like white coats and goggles.
I don't really think it through. I just kind of picked the A level I was best at, and then never used it again. So you probably use business more than I've used biology. So if I could do it again, I'd do something like business, to be honest. But I enjoyed it. I had a great time at uni. Absolutely love the uni. I love Cardiff as a city. I spent a lot of time there growing up. So I'd go back there, but I wouldn't do biology again, I don't think.
So what was the nightclub of choice when you were there? So obviously there was the Terminal, but then the nightclub of choice was...
I think it was Glam, I seem to think.
Oh, God. That brings back bad memories.
Yeah, it was...
bad memories.
It took me about 2.5 years to realise it was bright pink on the inside, because obviously in the dark you can't see.
It's horrible.
And I accidentally wandered into... They were filming... Do you remember that TV... The Valleys? It was like Geordie Shore. I accidentally wandered into a scene of that once. They're filming in there. I got shouted at by the producer. So it was probably that.
See, that's after mine was Zeus, which I think has probably been rebranded now.
That was long gone.
Well, Glam's gone since, isn't it? So
yeah,
Prison was mine of choice, but even that I don't think it's as popular as it was. It's the disco room that used to be popular back when I was in uni, but make of that what you will.
So tell us about yourself then, Carwyn. What's your connection with Cardiff and your nightclub of choice in Cardiff back then and now then?
Well, back now, I think nightclub of choice is my own bed, to be honest. I don't think I haven't ventured in a nightclub in a few years, and I'm sure anyone that's seen me on the dance floor is very thankful of that. No, I'm Cardiff born and bred, so not that makes me more or less of a Cardiff fan, I'm sure. But I was born in Cardiff, went to uni in Cardiff, very unimaginatively, did music actually as my undergrad, and then recently finished a postgrad in broadcast journalism at the journalism school, which is highly recommended to anyone that's listening and wants to do that. But yes, don't have the accent, the Cardiff accent, which is a combination of living in Thornhill and King Coyd, so make of that what you will. But yeah, been to Cardiff games, obviously been as a fan, been working at Cardiff games, if that's a thing, which is basically watching sport and talking about sport. So essentially what we do, I think here. I'm quite excited about this new season before we get onto it, because Cardiff obviously best of the Welsh regions. I was nearly about to say best of the rest then, but after last season with so many players leaving and quite a lot of promising talent coming in, maybe not the signings, but I'm sure we'll get into that as we carry on going.
So let's talk about last season first then. So obviously finishing top, everything came down to that, or top Welsh region. Almost best of a bad bunch, given the season that Welsh rugby as a whole had last year. What did you make of last season and how it happened and how it finished and all that kind of stuff? Alid, what did you make of it?
Yeah, so overall, I really enjoyed the season. I think we had a really strong start, and at one point we were up at sixth. I think I don't know if we ever got to fifth, but we were at one point. I was thought, oh my god, we're actually going to maybe get into the playoffs here. Which I actually looked at the Wikipedia records there. We've not won more games than we've lost or equal since about 2018. So for a point, I thought, oh, this is going to be an absolute storming season. Then really struggled during the festive bit. A few of the festive derbies we really struggled with, and kind of from there, I think the off-field stuff really took hold of Welsh rugby generally, obviously in Cardiff anyway. It didn't then help that some of the other teams had really good periods from January through to the end of the season. So, I mean, it culminated with an interesting day at Judgment Day anyway, which is always good to get a win, even though it's an away game. I actually walked past my season ticket seat to get to my Judgment Day seat, so I don't think we can claim that as an away. And then it was the day before Judgment Day, the announcement that Di Young had been suspended. I think after that, it probably turned into the worst month or two I've ever known from as being a Cardiff fan. It was just absolutely hit after hit, really, in terms of just different things coming out, really. And I think it was very difficult for the club to get on top of it, because you understand legally there's only so much you can say in that sort of situation. But hopefully there's some lessons to be learned for the future. Obviously, hopefully it never happen again. But it kind of ruined the season overall, really. As I said, even despite that, it had, in terms of rugby, it had been our best season for a long time, or at least equal to season with a long time. I suppose that possibly sums up where rugby in Wales is at the moment. I think there's probably quite a few fans that weren't particularly happy with the season overall. Yeah, so it's a difficult end, really. I was happy that we got the Champions Cup place. I think even though that's going to be difficult this year, it's good to see us back at the sort of top table, if you like. And yeah, I think considering maybe Carwyn would disagree, considering how hard or how deflated we all felt at the season, the fact that we were still the best of the Welsh teams, I think probably says as much about the whole state of rugby in Wales as much as it does about us, perhaps.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there, actually. I wanted to disagree. But, no, I have to agree. The situation, Scarlet's had that great, as Lee will well know, that great January period to about March, and then it looked like they might go really far in the Challenge Cup, had that collapse against Glasgow, which I'm going to mention straight off the bat. But Cardiff themselves, it was a bit, as Cardiff have been for probably the last 4-5 seasons, hit then excruciating miss. I think that's a fair summation. You have for every great length of the field Thomas Young try, you've got a missed tackle or a scrum collapse that leads to a penalty try underneath your sticks. And I think that seems to be Cardiff's way. Hopefully they get out the cycle, or so I've got to take my impartial hat off there. We get out of the cycle and find a way of stringing together a set of performances, not even results, a set of performances that are just consistent. Because last season, as mentioned, you've got Thomas Young, you've got Jared Evans performing out of his skin at times, you've got Thomas Williams finding that X factor, Josh Adams scoring for fun at times, but then the same old problems. I think that's the frustration. I don't know if Alad agrees, but the frustration watching Cardiff every week of a driving maul penalty, and then another driving maul penalty, then a penalty try, and then a yellow card, and then you're down to 14 men, and they score another try, and that happens every single week, it seems. But yeah, that's as to the final season. The final game of the season, I should say. what a way to end it, but it seemed very out of what was expected. Personally, watching that, I expected Ospreys to walk that game. Don't know if Aled felt the same. I thought Ospreys were coming in with all the form, and then all of a sudden, Cardiff just ran away with it.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually shocked walking away. Not. I think it's like when they're playing well, they play well and they're a good team, but it's very boom and bust. And you think you're expecting that bust more often than you're not. I think, which especially as on paper, Ospreys have got a very strong side, especially for that game. So you think, well, there's a lot on the line. I was actually surprised by how easy they made it look. Almost, I wasn't expecting that scoreline.
No, I think one of the big talking points, I mentioned him about 3 times in this already, but Thomas Young, how on earth can you have a performance like that in your final game? What is meant to be the sort of decider for Wales Warren Gatland's squad and not being included in the outer squad? Not even whether or not he should be in the final 33. Jack Morgan and Tommy Raphael, Basham, all great players. Don't get me wrong, but how do you not be included in the wider squad? It baffles me, and I know it just baffles several players, Ross Moriarty included as well.
And to be honest, that confused everyone, not just Cardiff fans, because as an out and out 7, you want somebody that jackals, has got an engine that just goes forever, and when he's got the ball, will light up the field. And Thomas Young ticks all those boxes, and you just like and like I say, not even to be in the wider training squad. Do you think, well, what else has he got to do? Has he got to grow another 2 feet? Because I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's done with his growing upwards period. Do you know what I mean? I think I don't see what else the guy's going to do to get himself into that position.
I somewhat get the not a Gatland player line. I do somewhat get that. But if you're Gatland and you're going off performance against Italy in, 15 changes 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, back in 2019, where Thomas actually had a decent game, to be fair, was one of the bright sparks in a team that had that many changes. How can you make a judgment on a player and not include him? But that seems to be by the by with several decisions in that squad. And well, I don't know if Aled wants to touch on the Reece Carey scenario, but that's another thing entirely, isn't it?
So, as you said, I think the WRU have to do what's kind of right by them and what they see. So if they call them up to the squad and then they're not making whatever targets the WRU has set them, I thought the way they announced it was pretty awful, to be fair. I think going back to the Thomas Young, it doesn't help that we've just got a lot of back row talent in Wales at the moment. And it's a similar story to, maybe not at the same level, but when Sam Warburton was being selected and you had Tipperick being closed out, is if Gatland's identified Jack Morgan as the captain, that will bring more than just being an out-and-out 7, I guess. So it's difficult when got loads of... but there's loads of players that I think we could all vouch for that we would have probably put in the squad that haven't made it, sort of thing. So it's difficult choices.
Yeah,
that's why he gets paid the money he gets paid, I suppose. And
see, that's a whole different podcast on its own. How much does Gatland get paid and what for? But I'm gonna avoid that one for the minute. So.
For the minute. That was slightly foreboding.
So, I mean, season ended on a high and on a low with, so you got the Die Young stuff, and then you've got, top region and all of that. And then you've got this whole off-season period where you've got things like, obviously, Peter Thomas and a glut of players leaving, rumours about everybody else. And now you've got kind of new money coming in and a couple of signings being made. So, what have you made of off-season? It's been like a little bit like a soap opera at times. But, Carwyn, what have you made of the off-season that Cardiff have had?
I think it goes back further, to be honest. Yes, the WRU, but also Eggate, if we want to call it that. I think that started showing there was serious problems with the club. It's very difficult to, I can't point fingers of who it was and et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure all three of us have got our sources of who they were. But then you go into the scenario with Dai Young as well. He's then left under a cloud, but also being cleared. It's a really weird scenario where he's, I bumped into some of his coaching staff the other day, and they're on gardening leave, helping out here, there, and everywhere. And you've also got the really sad passing of Peter Thomas. And, let's put it in context. This is the most serious one of those three scenarios. And his passing obviously has been so crucial to the club in decades. And to see his continued influence on the club, I know there was financial backing to the club continuing after his passing. That just shows how important he's been to the club as well, and how much the club mattered to him, that it was actually written into, I'm not sure if it was contracts or wills, but it was written into so many things that it was important to him that the club stayed financially viable post his passing. Really, soap opera is the word. You've got everything. And then I think if you look at the other regions, obviously Dragons with their new money, they've got players coming in. Scarlets have got a couple of big name signings. I think that's fair to say. Ospreys, we've never had a release list from the Ospreys, so I don't know what's going on there. No. And then Cardiff seems to be being gutted. You've lost, was it 2 hookers? You've lost two tight head props. You initially lost 2 centres. The one's come back. I'm sure we'll come on that. Fly half, who was meant to be the past, the present, the future. So if you compare them to the other regions, I think that's the one thing you'd look at as a Cardiff fan, I think, with a bit of trepidation, to be honest, is all the players that have been lost.
So, Aled, with all those players lost and a couple of players coming in and then going into top flight of Europe, I mean, how squeaky bum is it already? Before you even start the season, how nervous as a Cardiff supporter looking at that season?
I think, in a way, not that nervous really. I know it's weird to say. I don't think there's any pressure on us. I think looking at a lot of the comments from certain fans of other teams in our group, we're the whipping boys. So I don't think there's really any pressure, because I don't think many people are going to be expecting us to perform. I think despite that, all the players we've lost, if 1 or 2 of those signings can come in and perform and click, I think we'll still have, I'm optimistic we'll still have a competitive 15. I don't think we're going to be worrying the likes of Toulouse or anything like that. But I think there's potential for an upset in the side. But yeah, I think because of the sheer amount of turmoil they've had over the off season, and it's almost like the perfect storm. It's literally all the players, most of the coaches, the president. It's just if you wanted to write a script where you had a sports team and literally the worst of every single aspect could have happened, apart from going into administration, I think that would have been the only next step really to take. So yeah, in terms of going into the new season, we'll just kind of see where we go. Really, it's could go well, could go quite badly. I don't know how much pressure there actually is. Maybe I think possibly people have got quite low expectations this year. Maybe I don't know if everyone would agree on that. Kind of then tempered with actually possibly quite high hopes, but it's so up in the air. We won't know until the first game or 2.
Yeah, it's a weird one with Cardiff though. You look at certain positions and they're stacked. That back row, Alex. I think Alex Mann might make his debut this season, or I can't remember if he has had a couple of appearances in various cups. But Wales under-20s captain, and he's third, fourth choice flanker behind 3 internationals. That's a great start. You've still got Faletau. You've got various other. I think Ratty is a loss, but then you've still got brilliant wings, Josh, Cabango, Owen Lane. I really like Summerhill as well. Those are quality operators. But then you've got your key positions where fly half is probably one which maybe we'll touch on when we come to signings, but that seems to be a bit of a open-ended slot. I don't know if Alad's got or Lee have a thought on that, but is Ben really the option at 10? I didn't mean to rhyme that. I'm really sorry. Also, that is a TV show, isn't it? It's a TV show, Ben 10. But I think, is he really ready to take those shoes?
Well, let's talk about the new signings then, because like you say, 2 new signings at 10. Neither of them, not unproven, but from lower standard or lower graded rugby. And then, like you say, and another guy that's, I think he played centre mainly last year, didn't he? Yeah. So, does that make you guys know? You've essentially got some really good competition because you've got 3 guys all going for that spot, and that should make everybody better. But then, nobody there to really stamp their authority on it. So, Aled, what do you make of the outside half conundrum in particular?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, without being too dramatic, the whole season really depends on what happens there. If Tynus De Beer walks in and makes that step up and makes a push for potentially the squad and says, right, I'm going to use this as my opportunity. We could be in for a great season if he can bridge that gap. Hopefully, take us with him. If he struggles, then it's going to be a long year. I think it will pretty much boil down to obviously that position, but then there's a couple of others where they're very light, and if there's a couple of injuries or international call-ups, you then suddenly there's a point in time where you're looking at the team sheets going, are we actually going to be able to field a squad here? And obviously there's going to be a lot of step-ups for a lot of people. A lot of some of the academy players, the senior academy players. So you mentioned Cabango. I really like him. And hopefully problem is you can't just say sink or swim. I don't think you can't just throw. You need the game time. You need to develop players in a more managed way. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, a fly half is. I think it's literally if De Beer comes in and he's good, then we might be all right. And if he's not good, or he's not that he's not good, he's struggles with the step up. I'm a bit more optimistic about that because I don't think the gap between Currie Cup and URC is as great as some of the other step ups would be. Was it Cheetahs? They play in the Currie Cup and they played in the Challenge Cup, and they it's a step up, but it's not like you would be going from say the Welsh Premiership or the English Championship into the URC, which would be a bigger step up, I think.
Well, you mentioned English Championship step up. That's Arwell Robson's route, isn't it? And
yeah.
A couple of years ago, wasn't he? He was under 20s fly half. He looked like the next big thing. I haven't seen much of De Beer, so I'll speak on Arwell because I really liked him at under 20s. Thought he was quality. Thought he really looked like the next exciting prospect. Went to Dragons, and the least glowing recommendation I can give is that he didn't make it at Dragons. And that may sound a bit harsh, but at a time when Sam Davis was clearly becoming persona non grata there, he couldn't make his way into that Dragons side. So he's then left to England and has now come back. Is he really going to make a stamp for that first name on the team sheet, which I think should be the fly half spot is the first name on the team sheet? I don't know if he will. I'd love to see it because I think he does have a lot of skill about him. Probably Will Reed is a similar example of player. If you've seen the Dragons play, is that he wants to play. He does want to pass the ball around, kicking and things like that. Maybe not his forte, but he's an exciting prospect. It's just not so far worked for him. Maybe it does at Cardiff. And can he fill Jared's shoes? That's going to be difficult for any player, I think. Aled would agree. And there's big shoes to fill for a small man, isn't it?
I mean, so many of our games last year was, Jared was the playmaker, and they all hinged on him basically. So, yeah, we have to say it's exciting. It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way you have to look at it. I think it's an opportunity for some of the players, some of the coaches. As I said before, it's the perfect storm because normally you have a shake-up in the squad or a shake-up in the coaching staff. You rarely get it where you lose so many in both, and then you're trying to come together and form a team and form a squad and go from there.
Do you agree there seems to be a bit of lack of forethought with some of them, though? Like Lilo leaves, then comes back. Harry Millard likewise leaves, then comes back. And either that's lack of financial planning or that's thinking there are people in the market that aren't there. Because
potentially, I think it was, from what I gather, I think we had contracted Liam Williams and Josh Adams and Faletau at the rate that the WOU had set for the Lions salary band. So when we had all three, I think that's the three lines, we basically, that was the budget then. So then once Liam Williams signed for the Japanese club, which the name I can't remember, then, that obviously freed up some in the budget. But I think that they said a while that the strategy was basically wait until September where people hadn't signed for clubs yet and then try and sweep up some deals from the market, which, as you said, it's whether that's financial planning or they just haven't got any money. It's in the budget left. It's difficult to tell, really.
Yeah, I remember back in the Judgment Day presser asking that question to Guy Young. Obviously, now he's moved on, but he said at the time that it would be a really bad scenario if they were in September still looking for players.
Yeah.
So yes, this later season has allowed for it, but is that, are these players going to learn systems, etc.? And still, I think there's a question mark over Halaholo. One hell of a player when he gets it right. Did a couple of times last season get it horribly wrong, a few times last season, but it's a huge call to leave him out if you're not going to, as a free agent he is at the moment.
Yeah, it just depends what sort of wiggle room they've got in the budget. I know that it'd be popular with the fans. I know when they re-announced Lilo, I think everyone was chuffed, especially as at centre we are light. So, but yeah, it's just a shame. It makes it sound like you're trying to get rid of these players, which isn't the way. I was over the moon when they announced Liam Williams last season. They announced three. It was Faletau, Thomas Young, and Liam Williams. Compare this year to last year. That was a great off season. And it's a shame that Liam was injured when he did. We didn't see enough of him in blue and black, but I think we just reached a point where you have to be pragmatic, and if you run out of money, there's not much you can really do there, is there?
No.
Do you think that you might have an opportunity now seeing what's happening at the World Cup? Yeah, and looking at players from, I don't know, Portugal, Uruguay, whatever, some of the players that you might not necessarily have seen before, and then kind of going, do you know what? Might just be worth a punt. Do you know what I mean? Because you'll get them at a really discounted rate, but they're at a World Cup. They've got a bit of something about them. Do you think anyone from the World Cup will come in?
The positions I'd be worried about from a Cardiff perspective, no. And that's, I'm thinking type 5 basically, and that's particularly tight head. You've lost Arhip, you've lost Dylan Lewis. There's a huge losses, and if we're looking for a player to come in there, I can't really see that coming from one of those nations at the moment. Portugal scrum wasn't that great. Uruguay's went really well against France, but then has disintegrated pretty epically today against Italy, or today as we're recording. But the other sides, then I'm looking at. There are definitely other positions. Back rows, there have been plenty of good stellar performances from back rowers. There've been exciting, Portugal have so many exciting backs. I'd be looking at Mari in the centres. I'd be looking at the winger whose name escapes me now. But when you look at some of the other countries, if we're talking to Georgia, most of those are in Pro de Deux or Tier 1 French top 14, and well, that's where the Welsh players are going. So we can't have that sort of financially, let alone tempt them away from what is at the moment. Let's be honest and frank about it, a better product. Pro de Deux is approaching to be as good as, if not a better product than the URC. So why would they leave there to join Cardiff? And that's a realistic problem, I think, that you have to look at. I don't know if there's anyone that's caught either of your eye that you'd be signing a checkbook for, but for me, I think it's the players that I would sign a checkbook for are already somewhere.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think it's. I mean, with the signings we've made, I think it's pretty clear that they are trying to moneyball it a little bit and look at players who are perhaps undervalued, but are in that framework where they can either be they're either undervalued now, or need a little bit development, and they can step into a gap and then become the finished article where they are. But as you said, if there's if tomorrow there's a Namibian player, for example, who has a stormer, Cardiff can run over there with their checkbook. But then, as you say, the French and the English clubs will be doing the same as well. So if we're losing a lot of our players to English and French clubs, then they're just going to be running over there as well, if you know what I mean. As you said, if our players are leaving to go to the French D2, that's the kind of step that they would take up. As you said, I think it'd be different if we were playing really good rugby, or in a sort of silverware contention. I don't think realistically, I don't think many of the Welsh clubs are at the moment. So to go somewhere where you're not going to win silverware or get paid, or maybe potentially not have the greatest experience, it's a difficult ask, isn't it? Really.
I've realised I've been really negative so far, so I'm going to try and find some positives. I mentioned Alex Mann as a positive. There are plenty of other players that will see this season as a huge opportunity. Carwyn at fullback, it's going to be huge for him. We've seen exactly what he can do at under 20s level. We've seen it against Toulouse. Don't forget, in that champ where Cardiff had to play, was it 14 youngsters and Dan Fish, it seemed like at times. So there are plenty of great names. Evan Daniel at hooker, he's one hell of a talented player. I'm so excited to see him play regular rugby. And I don't think there is a sink or swim scenario, and I think that is fair to say. And as for some of these players, they are going to be thrown in the deep end, and I hope none of them get serious injuries, because it's going to be really difficult for them jumping up that huge gap between under 20s and academy level or Premiership level to be playing full-time URC week in, week out, and then Champions Cup on the back of it. But some of these players could surprise us. I think Carwyn could have a brilliant season. I think, is it Ethan Fackrell? Is that the tight head? I think I'm right in saying he's at Cardiff, and he's one hell of a talented player. And Evan Daniel as well is another one I'd name check, because there's an opening there for him, at least on the bench, if not starting. And as far as hookers that can jackal a ball he's one of the best out there at that age grade. So very excited to see him. But whether or not there's a couple of Stardust players to bring in there as well, that'd be nice to see.
I think the chances of Stardust players coming in is, I say, with everything that's going on at the minute, it's going to be quite difficult. But let's talk about the season that's coming. Let's talk about, because the URC is what, 3-4 weeks away? 4 weeks?
Pretty much month and a couple of days, isn't it? 21st is the first home game for Cardiff. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that's going to come up really, really fast. So what are you hoping for? And then what are you, because the two are going to be very, very different. What are you hoping for in the season ahead? And then what are you actually expecting is going to happen in the season ahead? So, Aled, let's start with you. What are the hopes? What are the expectations for this year's URC season?
So I think you always have to try and look at what at the end of the year, when you look back, what does a good season look like? I think last year I'd have probably said a good run in the Challenge Cup and top 8 and the Welsh Shield. I'd say we got, of those three, probably 1.5. The game against Sale was good, but still then got knocked out of the quarterfinals. So is that a Challenge Cup run or not? Probably not. Well, ish. It was a great night against Sale, and then just we're only a game or two out of the top 8. But as I said, it was kind of from where we had been in the season, that was kind of disappointed. So I think we have to check our expectations a bit this year. I'd hope for, if we could retain the Welsh Shield, that'd be good. I think that it seems like we Cardiff have had a lot more of a disruptive off season than the other Welsh teams have. So if we could retain that, that'd be quite good. And then realistically, if you could escape our pool in the Champions Cup, I think that'd be quite a big win. Because as I said, I don't think many people are giving us credit for that or potential that could happen. I think how the pools are worked, I think it's pools of 6 or 5, and the top 4 out of the 5 progress or something like that. But then I think maybe overall, if as you said, if the results aren't going to come, at least some good performances. I know I've walked away from so many games where you said, "Oh well, yeah, we lost, but we played well," and it gets a bit tiring. But I think this year we just need to be a bit more realistic and pragmatic and say, if we pretty much have the similar season, it's going to be a little bit worse, I'd say. But then bottom end of the expectations or hopes, I'd probably go with not last, maybe. That might be a bit negative, but considering how disruptive and tumultuous the off season was, I think if we could just claim any kind of small win and finish above, okay, let's really hope we don't finish bottom. But if we finish above any of the other sort of teams in our kind of bracket at the moment, I think that would probably be a win.
Is that not last overall or not last in the Welsh foot?
Well, a bit of both, really. It depends what happens with the Dragons, because they've been fighting out for the spoon with Zebra for a lot of seasons. But yeah, I mean, realistically, if we finish in a similar sort of position in the table to where we are, that after the 3 months we've had, I think that's quite a big win compared to, I think, if with kind of like the stability the Osprey Scarlets and Dragons have had, if they finish in the same positions this year, that'll be quite bad for them, or quite negative compared to us, I think. But yeah, I'm just hoping we turn up and the players, as long as they're playing well or playing with heart and passion and commitment, I think everyone's kind of acknowledged that we're in for a kind of rebuilding season, and it's going to take a while to settle and learn the systems, and for the coaches to kind of learn their way as well, because the coaches are stepping up as much as the players in some ways. So might be I would say high hopes, realistic expectations. I don't want to sound too negative, but I think if we just get a passionate performance and at the end of the match, if they look like they've wanted to play for the shirt, then I'll be happy anyway.
See, I love the way that we started off so positive about how fantastic it's going to be.
Yeah.
And we went down to, as long as we're not bottom, I'm going to
I do genuinely think if some of the players that we've kept, if they can step up into the kind of like that leadership role and provide a bit of stability, and some of the new signings surprise perhaps some people or do make that step up, I think we could surprise people. I'm optimistic. We'll find out in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
See what goes from there. So, Carwyn, hopes and expectations, are they any different?
I'm going to start off with a few achievable goals, I think, which is one, no allegation of smashing up any pubs and clubs and restaurants. I think that's a very achievable goal. I think And it's, a very serious goal. We joke about it, but it's, it was serious, those allegations. That's step one. I think wherever the finish point is at the end of the season has to be better than the start, because I'm expecting these young players to take a bit of time to get going. So long as there's that progression throughout the season, I think Cardiff fans will get behind it massively. I think if you see this sort of up and down curve that doesn't seem to end, and then again another season where we tail off towards the end, maybe even regardless of that spike on Judgment Day, I think that's a bit frustrating. I think so long as there's somewhat of a progression, and I think it's going to be a painful start to the season. In terms of Europe, I'd love to say European competition come March, April time. And by that, I probably do mean Challenge Cup after dropping down. I don't see Cardiff being competitive this year in the Champions Cup, and I think that's going to be the case for a couple of years for all Welsh clubs, and that's a sad reflection of where the clubs are. But if they've still got European rugby come March, April time, that's an exciting time for the club. The fans get behind you. You're looking to quarterfinals, maybe even a semi-final, and going one better than Scarlets last season. But the things for Cardiff is definitely that. I don't know in terms of a number. Generally, I'd love to say ninth or anything above. I think is a very good season actually for where Cardiff are coming from. Realistically, I honestly think 13th is good. Is almost not well. Good is maybe an exaggeration, but neutral. I worry that Cardiff could be in that 14th, 15th slot. That's my fear for the season.
Teams is it against 16?
Yeah,
right.
16. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think 14, 15. I thought I'd added a couple then. But 17th is a really good season for Cardiff. No, 14, 15th. I think that is a realistic worry / if that is where it ends, that is where it ends. And I don't think with Dragons making a couple of new signings and having grown already into Flanagan, with Scarlets making a couple of stellar signings, and Johan, as we mentioned previous to the pod, Johan Lloyd is one that I suppose some Cardiff fans will look at as the one that got away, being a Glantaf Cardiff boy. But and Ospreys, I struggle to see how they're going to struggle. I don't see how they're going to struggle too much with that front eight and a decent enough backline that will do solid work as it does season after season without ever being spectacular. Cardiff fans, I think, are going to have to be realistic, and maybe third in the Welsh table is achievable, and that's have to be something that they aim for.
So, I'll throw a real positive note out for you guys in. If you look at the URC table for this year, so far, Cardiff are in second because it's in alphabetical order.
That was always the way. I couldn't believe they added Benetton. They've done it to spite us.
Bring back Treviso. That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
But imagine me in Zebra, and knowing that even at the start of the season, you're always going to be bottom of the table. So if anywhere above where they start is going to be a bonus. So with all the stuff that Cardiff have been through over the last 12 months, really, who knows what the end of the season's going to look like. And in a way, that's almost a good thing. That almost it makes it worth watching. It gives you the interest. It gives you the, not the what's happening this week, but there's this constant need. There's a constant optimism that stuff's getting better because it's starting from a really iffy place. Part-time coaches, a new head coach who's never done the role before, a load of new players coming in, experienced players that come back from the World Cup, those kind of things. It throws in a big mix that makes it a really interesting season for Cardiff. And I think you everything that you said, guys, is both right. And that who knows what the season's actually going to come out like. There's so much potential there Well, then there's also a lot of potential for it to go wrong. But then that's Welsh rugby all over, really, isn't it? That's we could absolutely destroy them, or it could destroy us. So, yeah, plenty to talk about for that.
We've put our heads on the chopping block with a prediction. Then, Lee, what's yours? How many Cardiff fans can you anger at the end of this pod?
Yeah, so I'll impress you by saying I genuinely think mid-table is doable. I think when you're playing with the freedom to just go and play, and like you said, Aaron, with the expectations are so low that you can just go out there and play. And when you bring in these new players in, yeah, it's going to take time, particularly defensively. I think defensively is where it's going to be important. How do you get the defensive systems sorted? I think in attack, you've got enough there to actually go out and put a load of tries on people. So I'm going to say probably, 9th or 10th. But then I'm going to say as well, I think you'll probably be below Scarlets and Ospreys. just to give you a good bit and then take that rug away from you straight away, But no, I do. I genuinely think that you guys can do so much better than the expectations that are out there. And hey, I was a Scarlet supporter last year. I know about low expectations. I know what it's like to go, can we just keep 15 players on the pitch for a game? When that's your target, then you know that you're in trouble. But
calling up your tall mates to see if they can play on second row for the weekend and not punch someone in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think it's from where Welsh rugby is at the minute, it could really be an awful season for everybody ahead, or it could be the start of something. For the next 4 or 5 years, this could actually be the start of something good. And I really hope that it's the latter. I hope we get lots of young players coming through, putting their hands up, showing what's what. When all of a sudden we're sitting there going, well, we used to have 3 options at inside centre in Wales, and now we've got 6. And then we're starting to ship players out to English Premiership so they get game time because they can't get game time over. So there's a lot of potential, or it could just implode, and we're sitting here going, well, that was fun. So
I think I expect the Cardiff fans to get back behind Cardiff. That's the one thing I'm excited about, is seeing what that response at the start of the season is going to be like. Because you saw in that Toulouse game, I know it was a couple of years ago now, but the amount of fans in the stadium and the buzz around that game, you couldn't get a ticket for love nor money coming into that 24 hours before. So that's the excitement I've got, is how the fans are going to get behind the club. And you mentioned playing without expectation and throwing the ball around. Well, that's Cardiff for the last 3-4 years. It's whenever there's a lack of expectation, Cardiff pull out these big results. So we just basically every single week, if there's no expectation on Cardiff, storm it, URC winners. But I think that's the hope, is that Cardiff and Scarlets probably will say similar, but Cardiff especially will want to see attacking rugby and exciting rugby, and these young players giving it a go and just expressing themselves and being the Cam Winnets of the world, really.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do, gents, is we'll wrap that one up for this evening there, because we've still got plenty of stuff to talk about. So when we talk next week, we'll talk about the warm-up game against the Scarlets, which will be at some point next week. We haven't spoken about the new kits and things like that, and the possibility of the long-awaited stadium revamp that is promised. So plenty of stuff to talk about, and we'll go into some of the new signings in detail and stuff next week as well. But that's our first one done, gents. And I've got to say, very enjoyable. Having done this for the Scarlets last year, I've got to say, you guys were a step up on what we did with the Starlets last year. We spent the first 10 minutes trying to find where the camera button was and trying to work out why that wasn't actually working. So, guys, it's been a pleasure this evening. I hope you enjoy the rugby this weekend. So we haven't touched on the Wales game this weekend, but maybe we'll talk about that a little bit next week. But all the best. Enjoy your rugby. I'll catch up with you again next week.
Cheers, Lee. Thank you.
Cheers. All the best.
Thank you for listening to the Cardiff Central podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question is, rugby is always the answer.
Sports Social Podcast Network.